Are you ready?
Oh, yeah!
From parts unknown and into your home, this is the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. Now, here's your host, Groovy G.
Hello there, folks, and welcome to the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. Just when you think you have seen and heard it all, I can tell you right now, you haven't. Joining me right now on this particular episode, I have Colin Nguyen from C4 Authentic Belts. He's coming your way right now.
You spoke, we listened. Introducing the Groovy G Replica Belts Big Gold Dual Plated Edition. It's still full adult size. It's still 3D. And it's still only $600 US, delivered worldwide to your door. Exclusively available at www.groovygreplicabelts.com.
Colin Nguyen, welcome to the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Groovy G. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine. Now, let's get straight into it. What was it for you? Was it the wrestling or the belts that first got your attention?
Wrestling and belts. To be honest, we used to do a lot of wrestling with the kids. As kids, I suppose, from the 80s and things like that. Also, my dad and his friends used to watch a lot of wrestling back in the day. Andre the Giant and Hogan and all that. They would come to Australia and see the shows, and they would tell me stories about people thinking it was real and jumping in the ring, and then Andre would grab the guy, not my dad, but grab the guys and throw him like 10 rows across the stadium. That was great. And then WrestleMania and things like that. But what every kid does when they play wrestling, and we played a lot of wrestling because we got 5 boys in the family, and there was about 5-year difference or 8 years difference from the oldest to me. And me and my little brother was about 5, but we played together the most, my cousin and things like that. And the thing we would do is, when you win, you pretend you're the champion. So that champion and how they celebrated, like Hogan and Warrior and all that, how they celebrate in the ring with the championship belts, that's what you want. Always wanted it. Back in the day, best we had was Mum's 1980s fashion belts. So pretend you had one of those and you hold it up. It's always been a childhood or a life goal to make a real wrestling belt.
Now, here in Australia, WWF or WWE is now what it's known as. That was the dominant wrestling that was available here. WCW was a little bit harder to get access to. Let's talk about the Big Gold, because that's where you've made your name for it. When did you first see the Big Gold wrestling belt?
The Big Gold only came by when I saw Flair. I was only very, very young, but I did remember the belt. It basically made me confused because it was around that Real World's Champion time, and I saw that belt, and it's like, up until now, the Winged Eagle was the holy grail for me. It's like, that's beautiful. I always want one, and I still do want one. So the Big Gold caused a lot of confusion because up until then, I'd never seen something better or as good until I saw Flair. I saw this thing was huge. It just intrigued me. But being a child, I was intrigued for 20 minutes, and then followed the story, and then I forgot about it because, well, it must have been 40 years ago now, until I got into replica collecting and things.
And the belt making and the belt collecting side of things, how old were you when you really got back into belts again?
Yeah, around COVID time, started, like everyone did, reflecting back on your childhood and all the things you've always wanted. It's amazing. At that time, although we're all locked in the houses, geez, just before that, it was pretty prosperous. People were getting raises and things like that. No one was getting laid off. Governments were throwing money at people, and companies are keeping them in jobs. I think everyone did this. They sat back and thought, well, what did I really want all my life? Especially blokes, sitting in our man caves. I started looking just like everyone else on eBay and wondering, okay, and looked into maybe owning something that looked more like the wrestling belts that I wanted or dreamed to have. And I started, working with eBay people and things like that to get some belts. As a collector, back then didn't know very much. And then I asked them about the Big Gold, and I realized nobody can actually make a Big Gold. So I started collecting buckles to see what it's all about. And then I realized of what's in the market and what can be made currently are two different things. You can't actually do this. You can't recreate the silversmithing that was involved. And the only person that did that was you, Mr. Groovy. Episode 1, that's what started it all for me. So you have a lot more of an effect on me than basically any other belt maker or collector, because from what I saw, that's when I realized through your episode 1, you had that would be basically the master of the ones that you're sending out now, replicating. And that taught me a heck of a lot. That's when I started collecting buckles. And then I delved deeper to first experimenting with what was around. So all those I'll say Pakistan, which I knew through eBay. I guess my professional skills in terms of global manufacturing, my day job, quality, safety, environment, continuous improvement more than anything else, that seeped in. So I started investigating and how things were made in Pakistan. I even tried. I made a couple early days. Whoever's followed me 3-4 years ago, I did release a couple of belts using the existing suppliers and people. So I tracked down who would supply all the Pakistan belts that people rave on about, premium this and ultimate that. I found out how these were made in silicone, and I supplied a few inline buckles and some design tweaks and things for them to improve that. But still, after trying to a year or so waiting, and then we were put ahead of the queue because we had more direct sources to the people who do the engraving, because they do it for everybody. And back then, I thought that was engraving. I was totally wrong, to be honest. A lot of improvements you see, a lot of those overseas belts really started with me and working with those eBay people.
Well, you probably answered my next question there. I have always been of the firm belief that all of those big gold belts coming out of Pakistan are all engraved by the same person or the same people at the same place, regardless of what company is actually selling them. Now, how did you make the switch from those Pakistani engraved belts to real proper silversmith made belts?
A big gold book that was a great influence, a great source of information. But instead of trying to copy what's in it, it needed and I wanted it to be authentic, because one, my professional skills, but also my morals would not let me bootleg a belt, would not let me go and use somebody's name and skills and their art and what they created, slap my name on it and call it a gum line if I had nothing to do with Cromwell. So that's when I started getting into silversmithing and making contacts and building connections and relationships with the existing silversmithing community. I learned a lot as well, being able to pull resources and things at the early stage. Everyone kind of thought I was crazy. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of personal things this is connected to, particularly my father who believed in me. Lost my brothers. I was able to connect with first the silversmithing community, Mike do, and he put me on to the Ortiz family, and that was a revelation itself.
And the Ortiz family, of course, Victor Ortiz was the chief engraver on the original Crumrine Big Gold Belt. You've got quite a big write-up on your website, c4authenticbelts.com, about the Ortiz family, about their connection. So I'm not going to spoil that. If you want to go and check that out, make sure you check out Colin's website, c4authenticbelts.com. It's got that full backstory about the Ortiz family. It's absolutely fascinating for any belt fan or any belt collector. Now, in talking with you, Colin, your connectedness to your family comes through very, very strong. And that connection with family also goes through to your business life as well, too. You approach your belt making and your belt selling very, very differently than a lot of makers. For you, it's not so much about the money, but it's more about those connections and that legacy, I guess, particularly with the Ortiz family, creating that legacy of something to live on for future generations.
I started taking all my whatever savings I had and investment money and moving it into building up business with a lot of different silversmiths, with the Ortiz family, with saddlers, leather suppliers, rolling it into C4 under my umbrella. And that's, again, with what I do as a professional skill and things, which is business development, continuous improvement, team building, and I used it not just as to make a belt, as an expression and to prove to myself and people who supported and believed in me that I can take things and make almost the impossible happen if I was able to do it my way. I didn't need this to supplement a mortgage or anything like that. I've got my day job for that. So I wanted to do this, doing it the right way. And that's the most important thing, to do things the right way. to show the right care, to bring the recognition back to the people who made this big gold belt. And the amazing thing about the big gold belt is it's the only one that can never be replicated properly, because you can't replicate art. You have to recreate it. Just like you said in episode 1, Ruby, how things are made intricately, handmade skills, skills and ability of the artist. It's a totally different world to normal wrestling belt making or any championship belt making. There's no chemical etching. My team, there's no power tools. This is as pure as it possibly gets.
Well, the bar was set pretty high because just about every belt maker has their own version of the big gold belt. Hell, I even sell replicas of the thing. But you've gone above and beyond. I think you've beaten out every other maker in making the most authentic big gold belt that there is, particularly considering there were other big gold belts made by Crumrine.
My research and endeavours, I guess relationships as well, also move beyond the Ortiz family. And again, I keep adding more and more the original team and the original trades and skills into C4 to just keep making the belts better and better, and also to build stronger and stronger relationships. Sometimes my day job skills is to be a bridge relationships that didn't exist before, maybe have broken down and things like that in the workplace or the industry. That's my style. I'll give you an example. The Crumrine 2. So Crumrine 2, there was a second Crumrine made. This was, I would say, 2015 or so. It was made by Teddy Sharura. He was a pioneer trying to bring back the big gold way before my time. He contracted Crumrine. I think he worked with Milliken too. And it was him. He was the main source of information behind the big gold book, behind the Crumrine section of it. So I had episode 1, which is you, and then I had the book, and I finally made contact with Teddy Sharura. And he, at the time, was selling Crumrine 2. And that's when we started talking, because I was about to release my belts, but I held off because I wanted to get the right price and the right consideration to sell his belt, because it is truly historic. People don't know that it was made by Crumrine, but Victor had already passed. It was actually engraved by Jeannie. That's Hal's Crumrine's daughter. How historic is that? How significant is that? And Jeannie did learn her skills under the tutelage of Ortiz before his passing, and she made that belt. So the fact alone that if she engraved it, that's a very high level of cultural significance or historical significance. It really is a Crumrine, made by a Crumrine. Also, at the time, Alice, so you might have seen some receipts, has Alice Thompson on there. She was the manager of Crumrine back in the day, and even now, she was instrumental in giving us a lot of the information, or giving Teddy a lot of the information for the big gold book, and to be able to get this Crumrine 2 to work, to actually come to fruition. So Teddy was the first one in terms of connections, in terms of building up the relationships and trust within the original makers to be able to try to bring back the Crumrine. Now, that's a very interesting piece from Ryan 2. It's very unfair that people try to criticize it and things, and I won't get into that, because the reason is they don't understand silversmithing, and they didn't understand how impossible it is to bring back the gold belt, because it's a piece of art. It was the piece. His best student, Jeannie, with all her skills, recreated a big gold belt. Will never be the big gold belt. It's another one. And if you know silversmithing, and you look into it, look at the details and how it's the actual quality of engraving. At some points, some keen eyes have told in the silversmithing didn't know what the original was, or and as bigger fans of just pure silversmithing observation. Run 2 and actually more advanced elements in terms of some engraving and things like that than the original. Because of history, we love the original, so that's why there's a bit of a disconnect between people's expectations and the actual product itself. It itself, in terms of history, is priceless. And I wanted to honour Eddie, and I wanted to honour Crumrine by holding off releasing my belts until he sold it.
I do remember the Crumrine 2. I remember I'd not long been in the hobby when Teddy's Crumrine 2 came out, and it did receive a lot of criticism.
I won't break into, at the time, people could have been negative about that. They just didn't understand. It's impossible to bring back a lot of the elements and things at that time because the business was sold. There's certain supplies and things like that, certain elements of it could not be replicated, could not be done. So it needs to be looked at as a standalone piece. And if you follow this story in terms of the dedication, the connection between Jeannie and Victor, it's a priceless and beautiful story.
Now, StarCast Ballarat is just around the corner, April 11 to 14. Amongst the other superstars that are going to be there, of course, Bret the Hitman Hart, Eric Bischoff, new WWE Hall of Famer Bull Nakano. I'm heading down as well. Now, Colin, what is C4's role going to be at StarCast Ballarat?
It all started from Chicago. My initial contact with Conrad led to me meeting Cam Vale from OPW, and we struck a good friendship over at Impact in Wagga Wagga last year. Great part was we became friends and good colleagues. We took ourselves to Chicago on Conrad's invite and request to be part of the Chicago StarCast. My belts here was monumental that I was able to display them next to the original, and I'll be doing something even more special this time, StarCast Down Under, since Conrad, Gretz, and Mickey James especially will all be our guests this time, coming down to my own home state. So, in a way, we'll be hosting behind the scenes and with making the experience a lot enjoyable. Hometown, Melbourne-made, big gold belts.
Well, I'll be there as well too. Ballarat, April 11 to 14. I can't wait. Now, Colin, you're always trying to improve. You've got something a little bit special for those people who still stuck with us here on the Groovy G Championship Belt podcast, a little bit of an exclusive. Can you tell us about what we're going to see?
So as you see, we make our belts one at a time, and as we continue, we can't stop progressing. We have to always keep progressing. This is probably the final part of our progress, or maybe a few more steps after this. But at StarCast Chicago, I think we were about over 90%, 98% there. The extra 2% is quite significant because prior to that, we hadn't seen the belt, and we were quite renegated in what we did because we knew we made it the exact same way. What you will get now, or where we are at now, is culmination of all the knowledge, relationships, people who own the belt, Conrad, and allowing us the 4 days to study the belt and look after it, the original, as well as the wrestlers who held the belt when it was new and also what happened to it afterwards. So for instance, Sting, who held it when it was new, really gave us an insight into what it really looked like as in getting that white right, is exactly how he remembered it. And then the likes of Scott Steiner, who gave us a detailed account into what happened to the belt after it was taken off TV, why it looks like it does now. Then, on top of that further, is our relationship that's grown in terms of production and partnerships, purely because we did it in the name, in honour of Victor Ortiz. So as you can see, his family's involved. We recreated his hand engraving techniques and styles and trained a new generation of that to carry on the legacy. And as a result of that, through a friend named Kitty Sharua, I was able to make connection with Jeannie Lachelle, very especially Alice Thompson. Jeannie's the daughter of Charles Crumrine and the engraver, Master Silversmith, for the Crumrine 2, which Teddy had made. So that's quite significant. That's a belt made by the daughter of Charles Crumrine, Teddy had made, which is Crumrine 2. As a result from that, they've given me their blessing to work with Crumrine and to have access to Victor Ortiz's original casts. So Victor's casts of the figures and the conchos, and these are the cast dies that survived. So these are the original eyes that the originals, conchos and figures, which is monumental to actually know that still exists, let alone have exclusive access to it. What we have now is the actual original cast pieces from the original die of the big gold belt that we've included as an offering in our belts. And that confidently lets me be able to refer to our belts as Crumrine Ortiz C4 authentic big gold belts. So now we actually are giving you a piece of history, the most authentic effort that can possibly be made, given all the time and history, but also a recreation of history.
Wow, that is absolutely huge news. Almost like a new chapter has been written on the big gold. Now, you've sent me an email here of a little sneak peek of a video. What have we got in store here?
Please join us to have a sneak peek, because as anyone would say, camera photos don't accurately capture what we've actually made. But I did spend a lot of money on the lens. So please enjoy our greatest belt we've ever made, C4 Crumroad Ortiz Authentic Big Gold Belt. Now, let's look at it. The Ortiz Crumroad C4 Big Gold Belt. Almost 5 years development to recreate the original Ortiz style, Crumroad style engraving. Lost 2007. The past. Brought it back. Brought the family skills, family technique back to the world once again. Letters cut. One piece of metal, beveled, textured, engraved. One piece, and then raised onto the plates. All the joins you can't see. That's the skill. That's the expertise of 50 plus years of experience. Put into the training and development of our team. The texturing, just like a faceted diamond, excellently hides all the joins. There's your bird. In fact, they are a leaf cluster, but made into resemble a bird. All these are leaf clusters. These are all follows a scroll formula that our team and families have been drawing since they were children. It's not some sort of trace. It's embedded in their DNA. Also, the skill set that almost every silversmith has as part of their training. The next level of this is to make this particular right cut engraving 3D. No power tools, just the artist in hand tooling, sculpting, texturing to make 3D. See, leaf clusters arranged. At some points, a little bit more, particularly these big scrolls here. It's actually particularly more advanced than the original. The original left it solid and blank. But if you look closely at the original, you'll see it's also a 3, 1, 2, 3.
3 leaf cluster. Kind of almost left unfinished. When we went through with this, you have to understand, this is their family style. They know what Victor did and what he didn't do. And they also said, well, people want Victor's belt. Sometimes, as you can see, the 3-leaf cluster, pull it back, there's the original shape, bring it in. They've actually corrected some of Victor's mistakes. Silversmith terms, that is. Same engraving moves to the nameplate. The letters are expertly made. No machine, no computer. Skills that existed since and before 1986. Handmade casts. The crown texturing just like a faceted diamond inside to put the diamonds and the rubies, and also silver plated, same as the crown, and the globe made exactly like the original, as it looks like the original. Nobody can actually ever replicate this unless they actually made it originally. No one can replicate any of this unless you made it originally. Now, for the most exciting development that we can offer. Why we can call it crumb rind, because there is crumb rind to style everything else. The development had members of crumb rind family. Now, with the help of Alice Thompson, used to be the production manager, and still is for parts of crumb rind that still exists now, and Jeannie Lachey, the daughter of Charles Crumb Rind, have allowed us access to exclusively the original casts of Victor Ortiz. And as you can see, the original concho that the original has. You can see it's not too different. It's quite similar to what we've currently had. The difference is what we've had was a cast of a cast, and now what you have, or what we have on offer, is the actual piece itself. And the reason we're able to have this is we've done it in honour and respect for Victor Ortiz. Jeannie gave her blessing because we did it for their beloved Victor, who Jeannie trained under and was able to make the crumb rind too. In silversmithing terms, even the crumb rind too has a piece in history that was made by solid silver and engraved by the daughter of Charles Crumb Rind. These should not be looked at as replicas. They are unique pieces of them, of their own. Furthermore, moving into the next piece, original cast piece from the original cast of the big gold belt. The original cast pieces made by Groovy Manufacturing in Victor. Again, are not too different from what you already have. However, this has even further significance. As you can see, this is the actual piece. To take that even further, every piece history. You're looking at the memory, the love, and that strong relationship that the Groovy team had before they were sold. Lucky I caught the end of it, and I was able to reunite with his family, with the Groovy family, with my C4 family, to bring back the Groovy Ortiz big gold belt.